And we had a little offline banter. We were talking about, I think you made a great point about the difference between invention and innovation.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was a good point. We're at an interesting crossroads of new technologies coming out. We're shooting on a Mevo, a camera that's only been out for 9, 10 months. You raised the issue of virtual reality. Where does sort of virtual reality, is that innovation or is that an invention?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about it.
Well, I think it's important, that we go back, to basics, because we start throwing around these words.
Sure.
So the word innovation has the good news is it's the innovator's day.
Yeah.
Right. If you can't engage people in a conversation about what's next in innovation today, there's something wrong with you. I mean, everybody's talking about it.
Absolutely.
The problem is, the bad news is we've turned it into a buzzword.
Yep.
Right? Everybody's an innovator, everything's an innovation, and of course, when you start hearing that, nobody is and nothing is. So let's start with some basic definitions. I think one of the biggest challenges we have here is when people hear the word innovation, they immediately think technology, they think invention.
Yep.
So I want to separate those two. I want to define innovation as a better way to deliver value. Innovation is a better way to deliver value. To me, it's not an innovation until it actually delivers a value to somebody in the real world or solves a problem. Invention is different than that. We can invent things like new technology,
sure,
but they don't become an innovation until they actually help us solve the problem. The real truth here is that we have more technology available to us than we humans know how to use. The problem isn't technology or lack of technology. The problem is humans and the stubborn organizations we live in that have been slow to embrace technology, to use it to actually solve problems in the real world. So let's separate out invention, and I'm glad we live in a country that celebrates invention.
Sure.
Right? I'm as big a geek as anybody. I love the new toys. I love the fact that we have a big sandbox with lots of new technology in it. But that does not mean that we're solving the real problems that we face.
Yeah.
Until we start using technology to solve problems in the real world, we're not really innovating.
Well, and you can have plenty of innovation without any technology.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, innovation is not dependent on technology.
No, I think innovation is about what I call playing with the parts, combining and recombining things in new ways to actually solve the problem.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. When people hear the word innovation, they think I have to have a new technology.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe we do, maybe we don't. Let's actually figure out what problem we're trying to solve. Let's figure out whether the tools exist for us to do it today. And let's play with those parts in new ways to actually solve the problem, to give a student a better experience in a classroom,
right,
to give a patient a better experience, whether they're going into the emergency room or they're trying to take better care of themselves at home. Let's actually focus on the innovation, right, and use technology that we already have. I'm glad we've got lots of new technologies, but that isn't the problem we need to solve for.
Listen, we talk about it because we leverage technology all the time, but in our mind, technology is a commodity. I mean, we could come up with something. Apple came out with an iPhone. It wasn't much longer before Samsung and others had a similar. Now, did they infringe on some patents? Maybe. But it did not take long for them to knock that revolutionary device off. And I don't remember what it was, 6, 9 months, 12 months later, there was a peer product out there. So something that took years and vision to come together of bringing together all these diverse things, the web, a camera, a phone, all into one compartment.
That's what they did. They played with the parts.
That's right.
If you really think about it, they didn't have the best product or technology. We could debate, probably still don't, right? But what they do have is the best business model, a way to actually help us get access,
right,
to music, to content, to things we need. And you know what? The companies that had the best technology, you remember Nokia?
Yeah, right.
And their cell phones,
right.
They had incredible technology. They would brag, it's the best camera in a phone, on the planet,
right,
but yet they were getting their butts kicked by Apple that had an inferior product. It's not about the technology. You need good technology, but it's about how you use the technology to actually help people improve their lives and solve the problem. Not the best technology that wins, it's the best business model that wins.
And as my iPhone goes dead about 4 times a day, I think they're still working on the battery issue.
Yeah.
When the Apple announced that they were going to make a car, I was like, shouldn't you get the phone battery squared away before you try and build a car with a battery? I don't know. It just seems like...
We keep coming back to example after example of what we end up with is a combination of technologies that can be put into a product, a service, into a business model that consumers actually want and can solve the problem. And then you might have a better technology, but just the technology alone isn't going to solve that problem. And this is an important lesson for not only us as people, but companies need to understand this, because just because you have the best technology doesn't mean you're the most competitive, in the marketplace, right? You got to start with customer experience, put together a model, use technology and products in order to do that, not the other way around.
Right. The other thing we wanted to chat a little bit about was, I always try and bring you your expertise, which is national and sometimes global, and BIF certainly brings together your summit every year, people with expertise from all around the world. And I always try and harness it a little bit to say, how do we improve Rhode Island? And part of that is, I think for all of us, there just seems to be this appearance that we don't really fix things or move things forward until it's really a catastrophe. Like, we haven't been working on fixing DCYF. Now 10 children have died in 26 months. Maybe we'll start fixing DCYF. How do we change that mindset, that culture of only waiting till it's a catastrophe before we start? How do we instill a culture of constantly reinvention and constant innovation?
Well, this is so important to the way we should be positioned here in Rhode Island, because we should be positioned as the place you come to innovate, not last, not when it's broken, but first. Well, it's good. What's next? And what are we going to do next? And we need to position ourselves that way. So people talk about the burning platform. We only change when we absolutely have to, when we have no other choice. Well, how many times do we have to watch this movie? If you wait until there's a burning platform, that usually means it's too late. That usually means that you have fewer degrees of freedom, you have less resource and ability to act, and the people in your company, in your community, are so stressed out, because there's this urgency, and everything's a big crisis, that they really can't mobilize around the change, So you've got to change from a position of strength. In Rhode Island, what we need to do is figure out how to change the economy while the economy is improving, Not waiting for the next downturn. This notion that we're the first in and last out of every recession, That's not what innovators do. What innovators do is, while they're in the lead, they are figuring out what's next, and they're changing it then, when they can do it at a smaller scale and then figure out how to scale it for everybody, So we've got to get out of this business of waiting until there's a burning platform or waiting until it's too late. We don't want to be the newspaper, that's all of a sudden being disrupted to smithereens and then waking up and saying, what are we going to do in the digital space? How about we figure out what that new technology means while we're in a position of strength and we have the degrees of freedom to do it?
So I'll push back. One, are we ever in a position of strength? That's probably one of the problems. And two, when you're not innovating, it's hard to attract. Listen, smart people who are innovative, who are creative, want to be in cultures and want to be in environments in which they can build on those strengths, their own personal strengths. And one of the problems we seem to have is, because we're always a little bit behind, and sometimes very far behind, it's hard to attract the best talent, especially into places like government, let alone into Rhode Island as a whole, even in the private sector. But especially for government, you know, that makes the deal doubly difficult, right? If you don't have the best players on the field, it's kind of hard to win too many games.
So you can't attract resources and you can't attract talent. So I say here in Rhode Island, how about we change the game? That instead of playing the same game other larger states are playing,
right,
where we're behind,
yeah,
you know, instead of worrying about we're number 50 on the list and how do we get to number 48,
right,
how about we actually play a game that we can win? Right, and I've always said that our size is our ruby slippers, right? This is what's magic about Rhode Island. We should be about innovation, not about invention, about innovation, because when you think about actually solving problems in the real world, the small world properties of Rhode Island, the fact that we all know each other and we can connect easily and fluidly across all these different silos gives us a huge advantage relevant to larger, more complex places. That's our ruby slippers. That's a game we can win. So when I talk about let's make innovation first, not the last thing that we do, you know, it says instead of trying to stop innovation, right, because we're trying to protect existing interests, how about we create the conditions and support, right, to actually be the place where we innovate. I don't know if you saw the article this morning, you know, in the newspaper. We were talking about eyeglasses and contact lenses. Did you see this thing?
No.
You know, this was a situation where they're now starting to build the apps. We're back to technology, where maybe just to get a renewal of our contact lens prescription, that we could do it online. You know, instead of having to go to a local optometrist. Well, guess what? Right, in Rhode Island, the local optometrists don't like that idea very much, right? Because they're going to be disrupted by this new technology, right? Well, if it's Rhode Island and we want to be the place where innovation is central, we need more of our leaders to say, no, yes, let's protect our consumers, of course, you know, and our citizens, but let's be the place that welcomes those new ideas and those new models. So instead of resisting it and being the last place in the country that changes the way we get our prescription, you know, lenses renewed, why aren't we the innovator? Why aren't we the folks where people come from around the world? Because it's easier to get the idea off of the whiteboard and onto the ground. That's what I mean by being innovation-centric and changing the game. This is a game we could win. Right? This is a game that's winnable for Rhode Island, and we need to change the game, because playing it the same way everyone else is and trying to pedal the bicycle a little bit harder, you know, we could get a little bit better, but it's not going to change our lives. It's not going to change our economy in significant ways. We've got to play a new game.
So former Governor Lincoln Chafee was on a little bit earlier, and part of his argument on trying to compete with Texas with subsidies is you can't win the game, right? You give somebody $40 million, they can give them $100 million. So you're always playing from behind. What do you think about his thought about, and his argument is, listen, go to the fundamentals. Build the school system. Massachusetts, 25 years ago, decided they were going to make their school system one of the best school systems in the country by every measure of all the data we get from all the national things. Massachusetts is always ranked as the best elementary, secondary education, K through 12. They win every single time. You know, is that a smarter? It's not as immediate gratification as saying I landed Johnson & Johnson, but is it a better long-term strategy to be able to do that and say we are going to improve our educational system?
Well, it's a very important long-term strategy. If we don't get our education system right, and that's not just K through 12, but also our post-secondary higher ed system, let's go all the way through to lifelong learning so that we can all reinvent ourselves. Right. I absolutely think that any innovation economy, and if we're going to be about innovation, has to have as one important component, not the only one, but pretty important component of it, right, a complete reimagining of our education and learning systems and platforms. So yeah, I do think that that's really important, right, to do. I think that if I could only fix one thing, that would be pretty high on my list.
Is that number one?
I'd like to combine it with put innovation and entrepreneurship central in terms of our economic future. Let's make ourselves the place where not only people that are here can innovate, but people can come and be attracted to our innovation ecosystem. And as part of that, I think we absolutely have to transform our education approach as well.
I thought on your list, entrepreneurship, long-term educational improvement, and recruiting at URI basketball was going to be the third in your priority
Well,
list.
I was listening closely to the ground football coach, and I do love sports and the business of sports. I do think that URI basketball is a really important platform for the state.
Yeah.
Not just for URI, and we should be rallying around that. I understand there are a lot of PC fans,
Right, right.
and there are Brown fans here,
Yeah.
and there's plenty of room for fans for each of these teams. But our public university has a lot to do with the future of our state, and we should be supportive. I'm just a little biased.
Yeah, just a little
on
bit.
this, but-
And in some elements, we've improved our commitment. The innovation bond passing, and the opportunity for URI to take a step forward. They just had the groundbreaking on the engineering school.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
So
Yeah, really exciting. All fits within this innovation and entrepreneurship idea. We've got a lot more to do. And the thing I talked about earlier, whether it's the thing with contact lenses and eyewear,
Yeah.
or it's Uber, or whichever one we want to talk about, we need to be a place where when you think innovation, right, not technology, but actually solving a problem in the real world, right, Rhode Island should be the place where we can get those ideas, those new business models off of that whiteboard and onto the ground. Because if we do that, not only will leaders of institutions here get better and stronger and create better jobs, but you'll start to see capital start to flow into the state. Because believe me when I tell you, leaders all over the world, this is their number one challenge. How do we innovate? Where do we find the conditions that can accelerate our path to new products, new services, new business models, new ways to serve our customers? Rhode Island should be positioned as that place.
you raised the issue of capital, and Pre-Mama, the startup, was in here last week with Kate, and they've raised about $4.5 million in 18 months.
Nice.
And it was hard to identify anyone else that's raised in the $1 million in
Right.
capital in the last 12 months. A couple of years ago, we had an aberration year where Teespring did about $50 million in a year, and Angus Davis did another 20 or 30. I can't remember the exact numbers, but in total it was around $70 to $90 million in venture funding coming into Rhode Island. But in the last 12 months, I think it's probably under 10 million. And some will say, and I disagree, money will find a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little easier if it's down the street and you're having conversations with them all the time, and you don't have to take road shows up to Boston or New York on a regular basis. And for an early stage company with a great idea, going on road shows, you can die going on road shows because you spend so much time, energy, and limited resources on getting out and seeing folks.
Well, I know it's a chicken and egg, and we can debate it back and forth.
Is BIF ready to start a venture fund?
I'm going to take, I'll come back to that. I'm going to take the side of this conversation that says if we improved our deal flow, that capital will find it. Right? I understand it's a chicken and egg. Yeah, BIF wants to invest in new business models and ways to improve education, healthcare, and public services. And so attracting the capital to those early stage explorations is what we do every day. Where do we find that investment? It's a little different than startup capital, right? But we're focusing on social impact bonds to raise money for new social and civic experiments to change the citizen experience. We're focused on both public and private sector partners at BIF, that are working with us on the demonstration of those new models. But the whole game here is how to get ideas, again, off of that whiteboard and onto the ground. Because if we can show that they could work at a small scale, it can put us in a position, to scale faster. Rhode Island's mantra should be think big, scale fast, right? Right? Start small, scale fast. I mean, I think that should be the mantra. And our small size, allows you to think really big, but then to start small and then to worry about scaling, not just here in Rhode Island, but around the country and around the world.
Listen, I appreciate it as always.
Always fun.
Always fun, always invigorating, always getting me thinking, and just a great response from people who watch it and enjoy it. And then tomorrow it goes on Twitter and Facebook and gets bounced all over the place. Really want to thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Another great day of Business Monday. Appreciate Deepwater Wind for their support, and obviously today Block Island switched over from their old
I saw that.
diesel
How cool is
system.
that? I told you I saw Jeff Grabowski in the airport when I was heading to Texas to give a talk last week, and he had the thing up there, and because the background Deepwater Wind, we're shilling for Deepwater Wind here. We had a nice laugh about it. But congratulations to Jeff.
Yeah,
to
I mean it's as good.
Very cool.
It's as good a business story as there is in the country. And I think Rhode Island should be proud of it.
That's no small deal to flip that switch on, right?
And it works.
For Block Island. And it was a good proposition to the folks on Block Island, given what they had before.
And so thanks, everybody. Molly and Kate are back tomorrow. Great lineup today. Governor Chafee, Gary Sass, Brown Coach Phil Estes, and Mr. Innovation, Saul Kaplan.